to BizTech's C-Suite Conversation Show. Our guest for today is Ty Francis. He's the Chief Advisory Officer of LRN Corporation. Now, LRN propels organizations forward with the partnership, knowledge, and tools to build an ethical culture. Now, to date, they've more than 2,500 companies and tens of millions of learners worldwide utilize their services to help navigate complex regulatory environments and foster ethical, responsible, and inclusive cultures. Now, to tell us more about this, welcome to the show, Ty.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Now, Ty, give us an overview of LRN Corporation and its history.
So LRN was founded in 1994 by Dov Seidman. And, fast forward to today, we are now the world's largest, what we call pure play ethics and compliance solutions provider. We are in incredibly challenging times, and we like to think we bring meaningful training, education, alongside advisory services, which include smart codes of conduct and ethical culture building. We believe that inspiring people to do the right thing is the essence of how you mentioned principal performance. So it's about inspired rather than required behavior. And, we hope to inspire people to live principles beyond just following rules, because we think rules are great, but values are better. All businesses need ethics and compliance, but moreover, they need to ensure that that's a culture that's throughout the organization.
Okay, so I want to take a step back a little bit now. And Ty, can you unpack for us why ethics and compliance is really important for businesses? Really a 101 question.
So it all goes down really, I think, to culture. I mean, I mentioned about rules are good, and we all need rules and guidelines to make sure we're doing the right thing, but it's for everyone. So it's not just the incredibly educated, the lawyers, the compliance managers, the chief executives. It's for everyone in an organization. So creating a culture that extends beyond any office and connects every employee wherever they are working is a goal that many organizations need to look forward to in the months and years to come. It's a way to turn this great resignation into the great retention. And with culture as a compass, organizations can continue to evolve to be the best versions of themselves. I feel that a stronger ethical culture boosts employee engagement. It helps organizations retain so much more of their top talent. And not only that, it engages one of the fastest growing generations of workers. A recent survey showed that I think 72% of Gen Z applicants seek a fair and ethical boss. I think in the high 60s, they want the ability to be heard, and the very high 80s say that things like DEI and those strategies are incredibly important. Even in the UK, the Fraud Office guidance on evaluating what a corporate compliance program looks like is that it needs to be effective and not simply a paper exercise. So simply saying your company's culture is one thing, but being able to measure it and then identify where you need to be working harder to develop what we call a solid and values-based culture is where you really need to be. So that's the essence of why companies need ethics and compliance. It helps bind the company together and accentuates their values and principles.
Okay, then in that case, now that you've built the case for that and you've unpacked it for us, walk us through, Ty, how LRN provides products and solutions to achieve these objectives.
So, we've been in the business a long time. We truly believe that ethics and culture are the foundations of any corporation. We are now global. We are on the ground, and we help organizations navigate these changing times. We have what we call an Inspire library, which has more than 450 customizable lessons, and it covers training on needs of topics of anti-harassment, discrimination, data privacy, InfoSec, conflicts of interest, trade compliance, anti-bribery, corruption. And these courses are updated regularly, and it helps companies reflect changes in the law. We also offer bespoke content services to fill that knowledge gap. But one of the most important things we have is what we call a catalyst platform. And our catalyst platform is a compliance and ethics management system that brings everything into a company, from their conflicts of interest, from their training, their education, their data and analytics, their disclosures, helps companies really make a truly immersive training and education system. We help companies do better. We know what good looks like, so we try to encourage companies to be better, but create a system of values so people are doing the right thing because they want to do the right thing, not because they think they have to do it.
Okay, Ty, I want to paint a scenario now. I'm a CEO of a public company. I've just taken the reins of this public company that has a rather poor reputation in the stock exchange, one of the stock exchanges in ASEAN. So I'm a very large conglomerate. My new chairman of the board tells me, and the board gives me this instruction, that I need to build up ethics and compliance within the company and improve the company's overall culture. And there's a very clear objective as to why we need to do that. One is to attract more institutional investors. Two is to retain talent and get better talent. And three, of course, then key thing is improve my share price. Now, LRN does provide training and advisory services. So walk me through, as the CEO of this company, I have to turn around in this area. What do I need to do? How are you going to handhold me to achieve the objectives that my board has set me?
So let's take a step back. And the first thing you talked about, you got a new chairman, a CEO in, and they want to tackle culture. So, and this is critical, whether in the office or remote. There's no new normal. This is just next. We did an ethical culture benchmark research last year. And what was particularly important, we found there was what we call a pandemic paradox, or a disconnect between what a company says its values are and the real life experience of employees. So back during the pandemic, even though frontline workers were heralded publicly as heroes for keeping our economies running, in the early parts of the COVID-19 pandemic, they gave their firms the lowest score across all dimensions of culture. This included people whose job titles included office, administrative, individual contributor. So we also found that companies' desire to stay with the companies is predicated on having a culture of trust and a sense that that company's ethical and it's purpose-driven, and a clear company commitment to developing changes. So what companies' leadership think is happening in the company can be wildly different to what employees are actually living. So the first thing we want to look at is, what is the culture of your company? It's a bit like, I'll give you an example. You want to build a house on a plot of land. You can't just go to that plot of land, give it a quick once over and go, yep, everything looks fine. Let's build the house right there. You have to do surveys. You have to understand what underneath that land, what constitutes it, what other structures are around, what the infrastructure is. Then once you've got all that data together, you come back and figure out what you need to do to make that foundation the strongest it can be. That's the same with companies. So the chair, the executive team need to come together and find out, what is the culture of our company now? How can we understand what makes the people who work for us tick? What can we do to help keep them here and to retain them, to make sure that their working environment is the best it can be? And also they want to tell their friends to come and join our company. So that's the first thing. It's like a baseline on figuring out, where do we go and how do we do it? The second thing is, we're looking at focus on culture, but we're also looking at risk. And risk is a huge issue. And the foundation for any compliance and ethics company would be a risk assessment. So you identify and analyze your risk and your current base business operations to determine whether or not you're operating correctly in a region, within your industry, your organization. You all have unique risks to mitigate, right? So understanding that those will be in any organization's priority is critical. So you ensure you have those proper policies and procedures around those risks. So we help companies with evaluations of corporate compliance programs every day. And it's not just easy to understand, but what you risk is your first step. So we help kind of give you a 360 view of where your risks are, how to protect yourselves, your employees, and how to roll out specific training and communication strategies that really help pull all that together. Data is going to be the foundation of all of that.
Now, Ty, moving on from exactly what you said over the last few minutes, you use the word employees being driven by purpose. And that's a theme that's coming across globally in terms of what is motivating employees, especially younger employees today. How can businesses empower these employees to make the right decisions that are aligned with company values?
So, I mean, you really have to look at what employees, where they are now. You know, you have to meet employees where they are. So, you know, a lot of companies rely on what we call lagging indicators, which are helpline calls per thousand or course completions, which are important, but, you know, I don't think they're enough. Nor is it enough to rely on your basic employee surveys that that measure opinions about, you know, do I have enough vacation time? Did my office party work out okay? You know, would I recommend somebody joining my company? Do I get paid correctly, right? But it doesn't measure behavior or motivation. So companies really need to focus on measuring employee and leadership behavior, which are drivers of, you know, misconduct or organizational justice. So, you know, our research proves that ethical cultures just don't protect company reputations, they also propel the bottom line. So companies with the strongest ethical cultures that we've surveyed strongly outperform, and this is quite a big figure, 40% with those with weaker ethical cultures across like all measures of business performance, including customer satisfaction, employee loyalty, innovation, adaptability, and growth. So that's what we like to do, and we like to encourage companies to try and permeate every single part of the organization with their values. You know, it starts from the top. You know, leadership have to be invested in this. Having a very strong, dynamic code of conduct where all employees can reach it wherever they are. We operate a smart code, so you can get it on your laptops, your phones. It can be in hard copies in your workshops. But to make sure that that meaning and that purpose is identified everywhere you go. So if you ask any employee, what's our purpose? What are we doing? Rather than just making profits or, you know, making our shareholders happy. But leadership need to buy into that. So leadership need to be, you know, echoing this. They need to be amplifying this. Middle management needs to be amplifying this. It needs to be permeating and cascading throughout the organization. Because if you're an employee and you don't see your leadership abiding by the values that they're telling people they are, the behavior is going to change dramatically, and you're going to, you know, create a very unruly culture.
Now, Ty, you brought up a very good point that literally it's got to cascade down from the top leadership. The challenge with around investing in ethics and compliance is the fact that particularly in the Asia Pacific region, as you also alluded to early in our conversation, that there is a disconnect between what the company says it's doing and what's actually on the ground. How do you encourage APAC leaders to invest more in this space? Is there a bottom line translation that and again, bottom line translation often nudges senior leadership in a certain direction? What perhaps you can enlighten us that perhaps will nudge senior leaders into investing more in this area?
So compliance and ethics is all about creating an environment where people can do their jobs more efficiently, but with more awareness of the regulations around them. So when I was talking before about measuring compliance training by completions, it's a bit like asking a company how many people had breakfast this morning. And if 99% of people had breakfast, that in itself is just an input. Now, if you dug deeper and said, well, 50% of those employees had oatmeal for breakfast, you'd think, okay, well, they started with a very healthy breakfast with some energy. But if the other 50% had Scotch whiskey for breakfast, you'd think they'd have a different outcome. And it's those outcomes that we're looking for. We want to make sure that people aren't just completing the courses, they're filling out, you know, procurement orders properly. When they're going on business trips, they're putting expenses in properly. They're not buying Rolexes for government officials. They're not, cheating on their expenses, that, they took a business class flight, but really took an economy flight and pocketed the difference. We want to make sure that they're doing things for the company and with the company, and they're creating a more values-based outcome. So it's all about outcomes. If you can prove that your ethics and compliance training and your culture is producing better outcomes, you're getting fined less, you're retaining people, you're putting less pressure on employees to do their jobs, so they're happier, and they want to come in. They want to get up in the morning, they want to do something for you. Brian, as our CEO, he's great. He's really leading with moral leadership, not moral authority. And that means that I'm going to be more invested in the company. And if I'm more invested in the company, with transparency, what it is now, with social media and investors getting more data every single day, investors are going to invest in your company more. Shareholders are going to be happier. And also customers, your third parties, they're going to want to do business with you. So it's this big ecosystem, and it really becomes about business outcomes. So what we try and do, we try and change behavior to ensure that those business outcomes are better and more consistent.
Now, Ty, with your lens, your global lens, what are some emerging trends that we expect to see in 2023 in this space?
Well, so, you've got the obvious trends. So we talked about culture. So I would hope the focus on culture will remain and move up on the priority list. And we'll see more action by organizations to ensure proper measurement of it. Everyone will say, yeah, no, culture, that's our thing. But then when you go into organizations, ask what they're doing about it, it's normally very, very thin. So I would hope that that's a big driver, because that's what we're talking about today. It's culture. I think after seeing the aftermath of the FTX debacle, investors will start to elevate the governance in ESG, and exercise a little bit more robust due diligence in future startups, and not just taking founders' words, for it. Also investigating some of the rating agencies that are giving some of these companies the great ESG ratings they're given. I think data, and more data, because for me, that's the ball game. It'll be about making sense of that data and creating some real solutions to improve decisions based on that data. We're talking here today, BizTech. It's technology. It's creating solutions and initiatives that are providing more real-time, accurate data, and monitoring that data continuously to make sure that what we're doing is working. Long are the days of year-end reviews where we're looking at, how did that work? This is daily, this is hourly, this is minute. We can provide solutions through our Reveal platform on Catalyst that can tell compliance officers and control officers exactly what they're doing and how it's working, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, creating dashboards that you as a compliance or a CIO or an HR officer can take to your board or your executive team and say, here we are, here's where we are, here's where we were a month ago. Look what this has changed. Your investment into your compliance program or your compliance solutions has created this demonstrable change. So honestly, to summarize, culture, due diligence with governance, ESG, we're awash with ESG, but governance but data. And, in APAC, especially in Singapore, you have such a robust, innovative startup atmosphere there with so many AI technology companies bringing more understanding of data and analytics to banking technology. So that's where we are. And hopefully LRN's Catalyst platform can pull all that together and really help organizations create better, more purpose-driven outcomes.
Hi, it's been a fascinating conversation, very enlightening. I learned a lot. But before we leave, any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
So, the world's a big place, but I think what we learned in the pandemic, it became very small with Zoom technology and video solutions. The atmosphere around remote working has become something of a kind of like to do rather than need to do. I think once companies understand that creating culture is not just about, in the office around the water cooler, it's about creating a culture that keeps employees embedded in their company. If you are a person who went into the office and your whole raison d'etre of being in that company was because that was the culture you enjoyed, we need to try and replicate that online now as well. We need to meet people where they are, because now we're able to attract talent from all around the world. And if this acquisition has done anything for us, with, we've now got 2,500 clients. We've inherited an enormous amount of wealth of information from new employees from compliance learning. It's that we need to meet people where they are. And again, we can use data analytics to understand where everyone is and to create that culture. So employers and leadership teams need to invest in culture. They need to invest in data, but not just the data itself, but how they mine it, how they measure it, and how they manage it. There's that whole saying that, what you can't measure, you can't manage. And at LRN, we hope to be able to help everyone manage and measure their information.
Ty, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
Thank you, Brian. It's been a pleasure. Hope to see you again.
And likewise, we've been speaking to Ty Francis. He's the Chief Advisory Officer at LRN Corporation. I'm Brian Fernandez, and you've been watching and listening to BizTech's C-Suite Conversation Show. This interview will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our social media platforms. It'll also be on our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.